What is up, everyone? It is the Buffalo Blitz on the built-in Buffalo Network Tuesday night, just a little bit after 8 o'clock, and I am so amped for tonight's show. So amped. If you guys are tuning in, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, make sure you follow Built in Buffalo. Make sure you comment. The comment section is open all night. And if you're on Twitter, retweet, like, and if you do want to make a comment, hop on over to Facebook and YouTube. And if you prefer the podcast version or the audio version, so you don't have to look at Lance and I's beautiful face, which I don't know why you wouldn't want to stare at us for an hour. But if you prefer the audio version, you're driving to work tomorrow to your job that you hate, but you want to have a little bit of enjoyment, listen to us in the morning. You can catch it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcast. Just type in Built in Buffalo Podcast Network. Lance, you can tell I'm excited because we're going to talk a little free agency. First 10 minutes of the show, put a bow on that. But it's draft time. It's draft conversation. Full steam ahead. We are almost in the month of April. Month of April means the draft. Lance, I feel like I just drank a freaking energy drink. How we doing, man?
Good, brother. Yeah, it's the land of optimism here as we get ready for the draft coverage, and anything's possible right now. So that's really the fun thing about this time of year. And one thing I want to say before we get too deep into that conversation is that the Buffalo Blitz is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the best daily fantasy in the world. Sign up with promo code Blitz now to get your deposit matched up to $100 and play the best daily fantasy. So you have pick'em options and daily draft options as well. So go out there, have some fun, and be responsible.
John Roberts scaring me there. He said he's muted here. I'm assuming I'm okay. We're okay.
I hear you.
Okay.
Hopefully you hear me.
John, can you hear? If you
John,
respond, you can hear
turn
me.
up your volume. Is it plugged in?
Is me or John?
John.
John's talking about Trey White going to the Rams. John's freaking gone, man. He doesn't care about it. He's not listening to us. He's just dropping knowledge. Yes, Trey White has signed with the Rams, a 1-year deal. Could be worth up to, it's okay now, John. That was definitely on. I think I sounded okay the whole time. But yeah, Trey White signed a 1-year, $8 million deal that can get up to $10 million with the Los Angeles Rams just a little bit about like half hour ago. Good for him. I know Bean speculated over the weekend that he could have potentially returned to the Bills, but obviously I think at that number, he was never returning to the Bills. Good for him. And you know what? A couple of good things, Lance. One is he's in the NFC, so we can root for him, right? Like unless we play them in the Super Bowl, he has no direct effect in the playoffs. And two, I hope he balls, right? We love Trey White. There's no hard feelings towards the Bills and Trey White, in my opinion. And for his sake and for the Rams' sake, I guess, as well, let's hopefully he stays healthy, because that's one of the reasons. That's probably the main reason he's not here in Buffalo right now, is because he was unable to stay healthy. If he was able to stay healthy, Rasul Douglas is probably not a Bill right now, and Trey White's still playing at his all-pro level. So for his sake, I hope he gets back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, wish Trey White absolute best. One of my favorite players, on the team since he's been drafted. I have his jersey, and I don't try not to buy too many player jerseys anymore.
Too, yeah.
But yeah, I got his red color rush action there. Loved wearing that. So tough to see him go. I mean, gave everything to the Bills and to the city, and was just such a great person. But it is a business, and this is just proof of that. And we move on.
My younger brother is a huge Rams fan, so I said,
"You're younger, much taller, brother."
Yeah, younger, much taller. So I said, treat him well, and maybe I'll give him my Bills Trey White jersey so he can customize it to a Rams jersey. I don't know. Okay, Lance, before we get to the draft, we're going to put a bow on free agency. This past week, since we last talked to you, Mike Edwards was signed to a 1-year deal to be the safety 2 or 3, depending on draft. Will Clapp was signed to a 1-year deal. What a name. He's mostly played center in his career, played a little bit left guard. A couple years ago, they added some depth at the offensive line, and they added Austin Johnson, 1-year deal, who comes in as a D tackle. Lance, you can touch on that, or you can just touch on free agency in general. This is kind of your, I guess, Unless something crazy happens in the next couple weeks, then we can talk about it. But your closing thoughts on, I would say, the Bills free agency.
Yeah, so we lost Gabriel Davis, Leonard Floyd, Mitch Morse, Dane Jackson, Tim Settle, Tyrell Dodson, Jordan Poyer, Naeem Hines, Cyran Neal, Poona Ford, Trent Sherfield, and Kyle Allen. So a lot of departures. Like we mentioned, it's a business, and some of those guys are harder to swallow, I think, than others for a lot of fans. Not expecting some of the guys to leave, but understanding why the team had to go in that direction. Adding Curtis Samuel, we were talking before, via free agency, was huge. And then, we talked a little bit about that already. But coming into this past week, Austin Johnson, obviously another big defensive tackle. So that's 6'4", 314. I always say you can't teach size. So just getting a big, well-rounded dude who's been in the league, experience, smart. Will Clapp, I really like that signing. He's definitely, it's kind of like, man, who is going to kind of take over that Ryan Bates role where you have a guy who can sit in at any of the three interior positions and be or have like at least a reputable um, game to fit in there, and he does. And then Mike Edwards at safety, again, guys just talk about how smart he is, and I think that's one of the things with a lot of the players that they ask our staff about Brandon Beane or Coach McDermott. One of the things they always say is, they got to be a smart guy, and that's because I think the Bills system is a little bit more intricate, and you see that sometimes they struggle because there's maybe lack of attention to detail at times from different folks, and that's kind of what really makes this team tick. So starting with Austin Johnson, yeah, I absolutely think, signing him really gives the Bills a lot of flexibility to figure out, and we're going to talk about the draft strategy in a little bit, but just to say these signings with Clapp, Johnson, and Edwards really give the Bills a lot of flexibility going into the
Yeah.
draft. They're not strapped at any one position anymore. And so overall free agent thoughts is that's what I expected. I expected to, when you look at the MO for this regime, they're going to fill a lot of the needs in free agency so that they're not going in the draft absolutely needing one thing or another. There's definitely room for improvement on this roster, and there's not to say that they don't absolutely need a receiver. A lot of people's mind is they still absolutely need a receiver, and I can understand that. But with the team they have now, they at least have viable options for most starting and probably backup positions, and then they need to fill it out with depth at this point. So
Yeah, I would say I think you said it perfectly, Lance. Free agency was interesting. It was an interesting start to free agency, obviously with some of the key players over the last 4 to 5 years of this team, this very successful team was let go, right? The Micah Hydes of the world. Obviously, Micah Hyde could potentially come back still. The door hasn't been closed yet, according to Brandon Beane. Obviously, the Trey White door is closed. Jordan Poyer's closed. Mitch Morse, Gabe Davis got paid. But the Bills, like you said, and Brandon Beane has shown this card and has done this over the last couple years, is the fact, like you said, Lance, they don't want to have super glaring needs. There are needs and there are needs for improvement, but we're not going into the draft with like, if we don't get this certain position at this pick, mainly in the first round, oh boy. Like, oh boy. And we kind of thought that with linebacker last year. It was a very interesting with linebacker last year, but Terrell Bernard turned into an absolute stud, which no one really expected. So you had that caveat in there, but they kind of did with a little bit of a linebacker, a little bit. And Terrell Dodson, I think, raised expectations than I think we ever anticipated. Obviously, Tremaine Edmonds was gone, but look, I think Curtis Samuel, like we said last week, adds an absolute dynamic weapon. Matt Collins gives you depth. Nicholas Morrow replaces Dodson, gives you depth. Will Clapp, right? Like they move off Mitch Morse, they move off Ryan Bates. They needed to add another offensive lineman in there, interior offensive lineman, and the fact that he can play center and that he can play guard. Because what if you go into training camp, Lance, and Will Clapp is having a great camp. He's excelling at center. You can always move McGovern back to left guard. and play Will
Yep.
Clapp at center. This is a conversation that we can have over the summer, but that is a legit conversation. It gives you flexibility, and you always want flexibility. Austin Johnson, I think Daquan Jones might be the happiest guy in the world when we signed Austin Johnson, basically breaking the news, more or less. So Austin Johnson gives you more of a run stopper than your pure pass rush. He fills in as the backup one tech. He's a one tech, correct? Lance?
Yep.
Okay, one tech behind Daquan Jones. So the Bills they still can add another big boy in there, which I think is still a possibility, or they could shift their focus to more of a backup 3-tech. But this also comes into question, do you want to take a 3-tech at 28, right? And we'll get to this conversation in a bit. So you had that, and then Mike Edwards. Lance, this guy goes places and his team wins. Won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, is a very good safety. You have Rapp and you have Edwards as your two starting safeties right now. And Edwards is a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He can get in the box and he get hit. He can play back and be a free safety. You add another rookie in there, right? You have Edwards, you have Rapp, and you have a rookie. And I think you have a really solid tandem at the safety position. So overall, free agency, I thought they did solid. Like, you're not going to, outside of Curtis Samuel and extending a couple key guys like Deion Dawkins, Teron Johnson, right, and bringing back Epinesa, Daquan Jones, Ty Johnson, right? Like, the national media is not going to pick up on it, but that's okay. You don't, like, the teams that spend early in free agency usually don't win. That's just not how you build. You have to add rotational pieces, depth guys, and maybe one stud, and they did that with Curtis Samuel. But Mike Edwards is going to be very important to this team. Austin Johnson is going to be very important to this team. Will Clapp will be very important to this team. Even Casey Tuho will be a good depth edge rusher for this Bills team. They added a lot of guys. I love the Curtis Samuel pick, of course. And you go into the draft with a couple different options. You can do at 28, you can do at 60, and then obviously what you do later in the draft. So with that being said, happy birthday to Von Miller. The Bill and Buffalo put out a little post, so you go check that out. A little happy birthday to Von Miller. Chop Robinson would be nice. The DN out of Penn State. We'll get into some of those players maybe down the road in this episode or this show. So, segueing from free agency into the draft, using a question to segue, what did free agency change about the draft for you, Lance? Was it maybe something in the first, second? Like, what we can have an open dialogue about this. But what did free agency change about the draft?
I have a really boring answer, and I apologize, but I want to hopefully evoke some emotion and some reaction from you on this. Is that I don't think it changed much. I don't think it changed really anything. I think the offseason, there was an offseason kind of roadmap and an offseason plan that this regime had, and they're still following it. So I don't really think this is anything different than what I expected them to do throughout free agency and going into the draft.
It's more fun when I sit here and yell at you and disagree, but I kind of agree, right? Like, I'm not walking away or heading into the draft like they can't add this position because they added these guys in free agency. I didn't think they did that, right? If they kept Gabe Davis and added Curtis Samuel, for example, like if they went that route, then 28 is not where you take a receiver, right? If they went that route, which they were never gonna, but for example, they did, receivers not in play, right? Like, I do think the one position that maybe you don't go at 28 is a 3-tech D tackle. That's just potentially me. Do you want to draft Ed Oliver's backup? That might be kind of the question I would have, but I still think at 28, you're in play for a big boy, a D tackle, if that's the spot. But I don't know if that's the spot. But like, is it like Austin Johnson doesn't take away from the fact that if you love your D tackle in the 4th round, you go get that D tackle. You go get that 1-tech at D tackle. I don't think Austin Johnson does that. I don't think Mike Edwards does that at safety. I'm not saying the rookie's going to start over Mike Edwards if they go with safety, but I do think a safety still needs to be added in the draft, right? I do think, maybe to have a little more fun here, the receiver position is, I would say it went from like a really high need to maybe it's dropped just a hair, in the sense that you don't have to do it at 28. I do think You have to come into day 3 with a receiver drafted. Is it a guy at 60? It could be. Is it a guy that when you trade back, if you trade back into the 3rd round, could it be that guy? That's okay. But I do think you have to end day 2 or head into day 3 with a receiver. Heading into free agency, I was sold on 28 has to be a receiver. No doubt in my mind. I'm at the point where I don't think it has to be. That is still personally my pick, which is what I would do at 28 if the cards fall in the Bills' direction. But I don't think they have to go a receiver at 28. So I think that maybe opens the door a little bit more. I know Bills fans do not love that conversation, but I do think it's a legit conversation that I think we need to have.
Yeah. This comment's pretty good. I think that highlights safety and edge as areas where a team needs a long-term starter, and even DT still a priority. It's a draft here where we have 11 draft picks, and we need to fortify the future of this team. And that's where you have the right tackle position, who, if Spencer Brown is able to get paid and able to stick around and produce at a high level, fine. But if it's more likely than not that he may be someone that the Bills can't pay necessarily, because we've just got other positions of need, or we have other contracts that we're dealing with. I'm not saying I know one way or another. I'm not going to claim to be a financial guru with the team, but what I do know is that they've got to prioritize. And so you've got to get younger at the positions that are going to be most expensive to you in free agency. And that's wide receiver, and that's defensive end, edge, and tackle. So they have to absolutely get those players in here on rookie deals to continue their level of success. And they have to get good ones. They can't just, it's not just a warm body that they need. But I think that free agency didn't change because all the free agents are 1-2 year contracts at best. There's no long-term deal here that's keeping
Curtis Samuel.
Right. But he's only probably a 2-year deal at best.
Yes. Right.
So, I mean, there's no, there's no long-term signing here in free agency. So the longest deal, Curtis Samuel got a 3-year deal.
You can get
Highly unlikely because of his cap hits that he's here for the full thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Daquan 2 years, AJ 2 years, Mitch Trubisky 2 years, 1 year for Austin Johnson. So, and then the rest of the guys outside of Cam Lewis, they're all so it's at 1 or 2 year deals for every free agent they've signed. So the biggest thing is, yes, the players they draft this year may not start like you mentioned, but it didn't change the fact that they need to get younger and get people on cheap contracts in here to fortify this team for the future.
Lance, you mentioned Spencer Brown, right? And I think that's an interesting conversation, right? And I don't know if it has anything to do with free agency, but do the Bills look at an offensive lineman and not a guard or a center, a tackle? Do the Bills think about, I don't know if they would go at 28, right? Do they think at 60 a tackle's in play?
There's a guy like Blake Fisher who's played right tackle at Notre Dame. If you want to throw out names, that's one guy I'm just looking at.
Paul from Houston is a popular name. Who Kingsley, the kid from BYU, Kingsley, I can't say his name. Kingsley
Kingsley
Samantha, and like a Tyler, like a Jordan Morgan or a Graham Barton, they might be gone a little too early for the Bills at 60.
Yeah, I think so.
But I'm just saying, like, it's an open dialogue here because I don't know if they want to go tackle because I do think there's a couple more needs, but I don't think it can be just completely thrown to the side as taking like a linebacker or a quarterback, which is like not even a conversation, obviously, at this point. Like, I think a tackle is a potential need. If they do they look at signing Spencer Brown in the summer to an extension? That might be your best bet because there's a chance you probably can get him at a lower number, I would think. Because if he has another really good year, Lance, like he did this past year, he's going to be expensive. Tackles are not cheap. The teams don't ship off tackles. Like, that's just not a thing in the National Football League. Offensive linemen are very coveted, and they're very hard to get. And once you get them, you try to keep them. Deion Dawkins, for example, and hopefully Osiris Torrance down the road, the right guard they took last year in the second round. Do they look at this summer as a chance? Can we get Spencer Brown at a little less of a cap hit? Can we get him in a little less contract, lock him up long term because we think he's going to have another good year because he's finally healthy? We saw when Spencer Brown is healthy, and I know Izzy brought up Spencer Brown's injury history is an issue. It 100% is. But when he was healthy, he was a really good right tackle. So do the Bills do that?
Yeah, and it's kind of a possibility at 28 if they stay there and take the best player available. That's kind of what we're going to get into.
Do you take
You know,
a Marius Mims falls to 28, or a J.C. Latham out of Alabama, or like a Jordan Morgan from Arizona? Like, if those guys fall to 28, that's a conversation you kind of have to have depending on who else is on the board.
yeah, one of the things you're just going to hear me say over and over again is about the value of these guys and where you're getting them. So it's trying to see where we are here, and I don't want to jump too far ahead in the conversation for what we have.
Strategy.
But yeah, for the draft strategy,
full steam ahead, Lance.
You know, what I've written down here about, free agency changing the draft is not much. You have to build for the future with 11 picks. I said that, but it's all about value. It's about value, and especially in the first two rounds. Those are the first two picks, and that's where the draft strategy kind of gets interesting. So the three options I see, which are very obvious, I'm just going to say it though, is move up for a wide receiver
Okay.
and get your guy. Pick the best player available on your board at 28. Could be a receiver, may not be, like we talked about. We just kind of said that. Or move back and acquire some additional day 2 picks potentially, where you can now get, if you can get 3 or 4 guys in day 2, the value is so much greater there, because now you're talking about getting probably a wide receiver, a defensive lineman of some sort, whether it's edge or interior, or maybe both, probably a safety. And then, we just talked about potentially that offensive lineman is kind of the kicker there. So in those day 2 areas are just rich with those kind of things, because you're not going to be able to pick all the guys in round 1. Just, there's only so many picks, and teams are going to prioritize some positions more than others, as they usually do. So it's going to be probably quarterback, tackles, especially in this draft. For everything I'm reading and seeing, is that it's all, it's heavy. Go get your tackle early if you want one, that kind of thing. And there may be some edge rushers, or even, they're saying there's a good lot of cornerbacks here, which the Bills are fortunate enough not to need. So if people do get needy and kind of go up and get corners, that could help the Bills with other positions falling to them.
I think there could be 5 to potentially 6 corners taken in the first round, which is very helpful for the Bills. You want positions to go that the Bills don't need at 28. Right. Corners one, quarterback is another one.
Yep.
Offensive tackle is probably another one, I'd say, at 28. I don't think they go offensive tackle, but look, Lance, you made a great point when it comes to draft strategy. Your last point, I think, was incredible. The fact that the Bills can go from 28. Do they move back? They could even stay in the first round. Obviously, it would garner less additional draft capital down the road, but you probably could you get a 3rd round pick to move back 2 spots, 3 spots? You might be able to, but if they can garner a couple more picks in day 2, that's the important thing. Day 3, I don't need more day 3 picks.
Right.
I don't need. It's the day 2. It's mainly the 3rd round. Can they get more 3rd round? Can they get another second? Like, if you can get a team second, maybe you move back in the 3rd. I don't know what the draft capital is, and that's not my area of expertise, but it is in play. And moving up is 100% in cards, and it's not us speaking not of like prior history with the Bills. The last 2 drafts, they have moved up to go get their guys. Do they move up to go get a receiver? Right. I think that is probably the position. Lance, they might move up to get the end. They're gonna go and try to get their guys that they want, and we have seen that in past years. Do they?
Problem with this draft is, and I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I want to make sure we get this point across, is I don't know that they have the firepower. I don't know if they have the assets necessarily to
What?
go and make a bunch of moves early in the draft because the moving in the first round is extremely expensive. Um, so I think that's going to be the thing to watch if they
Okay.
can move up and how much can they move up in the
So
first
this
round.
is what the Bills did last year. They moved up. They traded when they moved up to get Kincaid. The two, what is it? 2 spots. They moved up to 27 to 25. They sent a 4th round pick, which is 130th overall. That's 2 spots. That's where it probably is. Like it's like if Brian Thomas Jr. is at 25,
Yep.
you get a 4th round pick, and you're hauling your what up there, right? You're not moving
Take a,
up.
take a fourth and a fifth. I don't care.
You're
Yeah.
not moving up from 28 to 18.
Right.
You're gonna have to give up potentially a future first if you want to go like the 28, like the 15, for example. You probably have to give up a future first. I don't know if the Bills want to do that. If it's Brian Thomas Jr., if you go from 28 to 15 and you give up next year's first for Brian Thomas Jr., I am not going to be mad. I'm really not. If you go from 28 to 15 and take an edge rusher, I might throw something on my TV. But it's that thing. So do they stay put and take the best player available? That they could, right? Like there's a lot of options in draft strategy. And I want to talk, can we talk some positions in the first round? Maybe some draft strategy for positions?
Yeah. Let me just, before we move to the next topic though, just lay this out. Or yes, I mean this is actually position. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
You're
I'm
good.
thinking like BPA it's probably like wide receiver or whatever. I just don't want to pretend like I know who Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean think the BPA is. I don't know. I don't see
Well,
that
if you do
anybody
know,
really
you would
knows
have a
them.
better, you would
Right.
have a higher
So like
job in the Bills organization.
exactly. So like for me, it's
Well,
pick
guess.
one. Pick one has to be where the value is greatest for them, where they think they can plug a guy in to
Mm-hmm.
play early and often. And wide receiver seems like the best spot for that for me.
I gotta. Can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
What positions would you no moving up and no moving back? The Bills are stuck at 28. This is where they're picking. What positions, just list them off and then we can break them down, would you take at 28?
Um, Wide receiver and edge are probably the two.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah, I really don't see a safety being
I'm not saying that's
value there,
wrong. I'm just saying.
but, that's the as far as, like, a need goes, like, safety would be the other idea that we've talked about a million times over this, early draft the early mock draft seasons and
Yeah.
stuff like that is
Yeah.
like, okay, first it was like, "Oh, yeah, we can get a safety round 1, no problem," and then it was like, "Oh, yeah, they're all 2nd or 3rd round grades." So,
You don't take a safety in the first.
um yeah, it's kinda like the value has to be there. You
Does
cannot I don't think they can afford necessarily to really reach on guys. I think they have to get the guys with the most value, and at the end of the first round, it's gonna probably be one of those receivers that are sitting there, whether it's Leggett, McConkey, Worthy,
Yeah.
somebody like that, or if Brian Thomas is there, Brian Thomas Jr. So it's like those are the big targets.
It does like safety doesn't ever cross my mind when it comes to round one because I also think McDermott's strong suit is developing defensive backs, right? They're not going to reach for a defensive back. That conversation of Tyler Nubin potentially being in the first round, I don't buy that, and I don't think he's a first round prospect, in my opinion. 60, if he's at 60, which he won't be, if he's at 60, sure, I'm 100% on board with that. I agree. Receiver, edge. D tackle is interesting. That's the third option, in my opinion, of where
In
the
round 1?
at 28. So I agree with receiver. That's why I wanted to ask this question. So I'm going through my big board. Quarterback, no. Running back, no. Receiver, yes. Tight end, no. Interior O lineman, maybe Jackson Powers Johnson. That's the only guy that would be, and that would
Yeah, if he fell and they took him, I would not be mad.
you would just and then you would have to he would be your starting center, and you have to move McGovern to left guard, or you can move him to left guard. I don't know. He would have to start right away because you need a guy at 28 to make an impact right away, and I do think Jackson Powers
I
Johnson
think
would.
so too, yeah.
So he'd be the only prospect. Tackle, I don't think they go up to 28 because I don't think he would start right away. That's the problem with tackle at 28. You need a guy to come in and play right away. He's not going to play right away unless you move him to guard. And I don't think that's value if you're the Bills taking a
You could
tackle, moving him to
really
guard.
the only position that someone can come in and play right away is the wide receiver too.
I
Really, I mean,
I
that's the only
I do
glaring
think
hole, and that's where I
true.
think, like, you have all the free agent signings where you have a starting offensive line now where you could be perfectly fine. You don't need, yes, again, can the positions be upgraded? Sure, they can, but I don't know that a rookie's going to come in right away and be better than Will Clapp or Connor McGovern or even David Edwards right away. Maybe they could,
Maybe
but I
Jackson Patrick.
think you can't. It's tough. Like I don't think you can really necessarily have that attitude in the draft this year. Is like, all right, our first round picks got to play day one. If that is their attitude, though, then it has to be wide receiver too. I mean, I don't really see.
I do think a D tackle would play a ton of snaps and an edge because they rotate those guys. So I do.
Sure.
Maybe the edge would be the second, just because right now the edge room is Von Miller, Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, and Casey Tuhill. And
yeah, I like the edge. I like the.
I think
That's
edge
why I
is in
said edge and wide
No,
receiver.
you
Really
did
the
say
two.
that. So I'm not saying you didn't say that. Would D so I'll talk about D tackle because I think that's so I agree. Receiver and edge would be my two positions right now at 28. I do think D tackle is an interesting conversation. There's two guys that I would take at 28. I would take Byron Murphy and I would take Jason Newton. Those are the two guys. I love T'Vondre Sweat. I don't think we take him at 28. I don't take Chris Jenkins at 28, and I don't take Braden Fisk at 28. I don't. Those guys, I think you would take them at 60 in 100% in a heartbeat. But Lance, would you take a Byron Murphy at 28? Would you take a Newton at 28? Would that be in play for you? Or and am I missing someone else as well at the D tackle room? Would you take at 28?
I'm not saying I wouldn't take him. I just think that, like, yeah, Newton and Murphy are probably the only two in the first round. But I just like some of the other guys later in the draft that you have the ability to.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, like, if that's your option, like, could you trade back to somebody else that wants them and acquire
Yeah.
one or two more day two picks, and then you have, T'Vondre Sweat, or you liked Brandon Dorless, who's probably going to be more of an interior. Braden Fisk, those guys can be had in the second round, and you would have the additional capital. Like if that's going to be your pick at 28, I just feel like there's more value to be had than a D tackle. If I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't be mad.
It's a fun conversation. It's a fun
It is.
conversation.
I'll say I wouldn't be mad about it, getting Murphy or Newton in the
They're
first. I
both
just think that
three
there's
techs,
more.
right?
Yeah, I think there's bigger
Newton's a three tech.
holes to fill. There's bigger. I mean, because we just signed Ed Oliver to an extension and stuff like that, so he's kind of on another deal. But there are not a lot of other guys around him locked up long term on this roster, and that's where another, again, a 5-year contract for a rookie would be helpful along the D line, because they are so expensive. So that's where I really thought edge was more that, get them in the first round if you want, because you have now 5 years. We're seeing, Rousseau come to the end of his pretty soon, and we're going to be, Brandon Beane's being asked about picking up his 5th-year option. And it's like, yeah, why wouldn't we do that? So it's no brainer.
Edge rusher is interesting, right? So what edge rushers get to 28, for example? And look, I love this game. This game we're playing right now is interesting because obviously Lance and I have no idea. We have an idea, but we don't know exactly, obviously, who's going to get the 28 or not. We're estimating here, right? So I don't think Jared Verse from Florida State. I don't think Dallas Turner from Alabama get the 28. I don't think they sniff 28. Latu, I messed his name up so bad. Latu from UCLA could be there at 28. Chop Robinson could be there at 28. And maybe a Darius Robinson out of Missouri, who's a borderline first-round pick, in my opinion, could be there at 28. I don't see anyone else being valuable at 28. So is there even an edge rusher that we like at 28? It's a position that I like at 28, but is there a player at 28 that realistically we could take? And I think the only guy would probably be at this moment would probably be Chop Robinson. I think Latu, Turner, and Verse all gone by 28. I think Chop Robinson would have to be the pick. Thoughts on that, Lance? Well,
yeah, I do. I think, again, just
and I know,
value.
And I know
You got to pick somebody. So I mean, I think that the guys we're talking about, if the guy has a first round grade on him, then I'm down for that. But I'm not necessarily down for picking a guy that's got a second round grade at the end of round one when you could potentially move back into the second round, get the same guy or similar guy, um, and then acquire additional capital for like a round three or a couple of round threes, maybe something like that. So that's where I would have it would be a tough decision, I think, for them. But I wouldn't be mad at all if Chop Robinson was a Bill after round one.
Look, I'm not saying that none of these guys are going to be there at 28, but I don't think there's a like 8 first round DNs, right? I think you're closer to 5 or maybe even 4
Probably four.
DNs. I like Darius Robinson more than most people do. That's just my opinion. So is 60 more valuable for an edge rusher? And we always go back to receiver, right?
Yeah.
Because that's probably the deepest position in the first round, in my opinion. There's 8 to 9 guys that are potentially first round grades. Joey's coming in. He's talking about receiver out of Oregon, and I'm assuming he's talking about Troy Franklin. I moved him down to a round 2 grade, top of round 2. His weight was a little bit of concern. His body catching was a little bit of concern. The Bills are going to have him in for a top 30 visit, or they met with him. One of the two, I forgot. He could be in play at 28, but is he a guy, if you trade out at 28, he could be your guy. And I think that might fit a little bit more for him. Joe, it's a good question. I think he's talented. I think he's a burner. I think he's a vertical threat, and the Bills need a vertical threat. His weight is a little bit of an issue. His body size is a little bit of an issue. The reason I dropped him from a round 1 grade to the top of round 2, right at the top of my round 2. So I do think he's a little bit of weight is a little bit of an issue, but I do think he's a great over the top. Any thoughts on Troy Franklin, Lance?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a decent receiver in the NFL, and I don't think he's a first rounder by any means, but I think definitely this is where if that's the guy they like, because I was listening to, and people have their own opinions on WGR, and that's fine. But I enjoy some of the guys on that, and they were going through some of the draft profiles of some of the greatest wide receivers of all time, and the things people were saying about them. And with weight, I mean that's easy. That's literally the Bills have one of the best departments to manage someone's biology and weight, so they can manipulate his diet and things like that and get him to where he needs to be. I'm not necessarily concerned about that. I want to know that he's got the intangibles and the hand-eye coordination and the hands. I think hand size does get a little bit of a rap, but I think in Buffalo it might be more important because you're trying to catch a cold, hard football from Josh Allen firing it. Like you're going to need
In December,
decent sized hands to get the production. I just think it's kind of necessary. So I think he'd be good, but I don't think he's a round 1 value, and that's what we're talking here. I really think the best scenario is going to be moving back. I'm just gaining more and more steam on that, because then you can get, like I say, the 3 big positions you want to get, and maybe 4 if you can get that, but you're going to get wide receiver, D line, and safety in the second and third round with great value. I really think Brendan Rice would be a great pick, but he doesn't have the value until probably that 60 pick. But if you have an early round 2 pick where you run a D lineman there, or maybe like a Tavondre Sweat, maybe early seconds too high for him. But if you come away with 2 second round picks, and then you can probably get a guy like Cam Kinchins, who we've been discussing the offseason here, in round 3. And for edge, we talked about Adisa Isaac a ton, Chop Robinson's teammate, and I think that would be second round is right in his wheelhouse. So it's just a matter of where you can get yourself in day 2 to get some of these guys. Like, are you going to be in position to get like a Brendan Rice, Adisa Isaac, and then maybe a nice safety like Kitchens in the third? If you can come away with those out of the first 2 days with those 3 players, let's say, yeah, you didn't get the top guys right at 28 in the first round, but you still got the value for each pick, and where you took them.
Braylon Trice out of Washington is, I think, would be a good pick on day 2. Brandon Dorlus, who I've mentioned probably 700 times. Chris Braswell from Alabama, more of like that linebacker edge, kind of like Von Miller
Mhm.
type of guy. They go get after the quarterback. There's some good guys on day 3. Like I do think Darius Robinson, who I like in the first round, could be there in round 2. I do
Mhm.
as well, right? So the edge rusher is a good conversation. Before we get to maybe we can talk day 2 a little bit more here. Because I do want to talk about pick 60 in a second here, Lance, because I think that's a very important pick, and we've kind of touched on that. John's coming in with a question here. Who do you think is better, Xavier Legette, wide receiver out of South Carolina, or Troy Franklin out of Oregon? I'm going to be quick here. Legette out of South Carolina. I think he is starting to gain a lot of momentum for the Bills at 28, and it's more fan momentum than like legit sources here. Obviously, it's smoke season, so Bean's not going to tip his hat too much. Of course, he's not, but I do think he's gaining momentum. I have around 1 grade on him. I have around 2 grade on Troy Franklin. So I think Legette is a legit option at 28. He has the body. His production took a little while to develop in college, but I think he's like an AD Mitchell, right? He has that outside threat. He can take the top off the defense, and he's a very physical receiver. Someone that I think would do very well in the system, and something that I think the Bills are missing. So I would go Legette at 28, and I would go Legette over Franklin.
Easily, 100%.
Okay.
Legette's the answer over Franklin, um, hands down. Uh, Looking at some big boards here, it's funny that they have a lot of people ahead of Legette still, even so. But yeah, I don't see again. You can't teach the size, and Legette's already got the body composition you're looking for, and some of those intangibles you're looking for. So then from there, it's teaching him to run the right routes and immerse himself in the playbook and that kind of thing.
Imagine a receiving room of Stephon Diggs, Xavier Legette, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and Dawson Knox.
That's a good room.
It's a good room. It's a good room. Let's talk pick 60. So for this game, let's do 2 scenarios here, Lance, for pick 60. Scenario 1, the Bills go receiver at pick 28. Whoever receiver it is, and they go a receiver. It could be Brian Thomas, it could be AD Mitchell, it could be Lad McConkey, Xavier Legette. They go receiver at 28. Both these scenarios will have no trades. So 28, they go receiver. Pick 60. What are we looking at for pick 60?
Yeah, we're looking for is like Tavondre Sweat there still.
Okay.
Can we get just beef, gap eater, block eater, and those kind of things? I think he would qualify as just like slam dunk, sign me up round 2 at pick 60. Can you get the safety you want there? Those are my 2. I'm looking at, like I said, wide receiver, best pick available at pick 1, and then pick 2's got to be wide receiver, defensive line, or safety. One of those 3 positions I feel like has to be there at pick 60 or your second pick, wherever that may be. And I really think Sweat and that kind of a player would make a ton of sense on this team. But whoever else that the Bills identify at the defensive tackle position or at the edge position, if it was Adisa Isaac at 60, that would be fantastic as well. But it's so hard to move past the ability to take a Cam Kinchins at round 2, even though he's probably got a round 3 grade now through the process. I would still jump on him at round 2 in that position at 60.
60 is a fun conversation if they go receiver at 28, because it's a really fun conversation. Because, like you said, they can go D tackle, they can go edge, they can go safety. I think those are the 3 positions I would target. Do they go with Javon Bullard from Georgia? Do they go a Kalen Bullock from USC, who's a really good free safety? Jaden Hicks from Washington State. I'm really high on Tyke Smith from Georgia as well. He's probably more of a round 3 guy. I do think he's better than his grade, in my opinion. Someone that's recently popped up is Renardo Green from Florida State, and I have to do a little bit more research on him. Cole Bishop from Utah, right? I don't know if those guys are in play at 60, but I think a safety is at 60 is probably where I would go. But if big boy Devondre Sweat is sitting there at 60, it's going to be tough for me to not take him. Or an edge, right, Lance? Like, I think there's 60 could be BPA out of those three positions. Who's the best player available from those three positions? That's what you would do at 60. So what we got a comment here coming in. Sweat doesn't fit our scheme, Lance. What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't fully agree.
Yeah, I don't
It's
agree with that. I think that he would be great. I mean, the way that the Bills are able to succeed across the defensive line depends upon that person that they're going to that the offensive line is going to double team and focus on, or be able to dominate if they don't focus on them. And Daquan Jones did a really good job of this at the beginning of last year, where when teams were focused on everybody else, he was able to penetrate, beat his man. And does it need to be Devondre Sweat? No, he's just huge. It makes a lot of sense to be able to get, one of the things the Bills have lacked throughout the years here is the ability to really stuff the run when needed. So, he gives you that ability to block a couple of gaps up immediately just by his sheer size.
does
So
Austin
I would say this.
does Austin Johnson maybe sway you away because I know he's on a 1-year deal. The problem is they all play the same position in the sense of like Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, and for example, Devondre Sweat would play the same position. Does it make more sense at D tackle at pick 60 to go Braden Fisk?
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
Does that make more sense? Because do they use Austin Johnson as the Daquan Jones backup? Because that's what I think he comes in immediately as at the moment. Do they go Braden Fisk to be Ed Oliver's backup? Like, is that what they want to do?
There's no reason you couldn't play two, pass rushing guys side by, or two faster, quicker guys. Now,
you can make
in
Devondre
the early downs, you gotta have run stuffing, and that's where the appeal of Devondre Sweat is. This defense actually relies very much on getting their linebackers clean, and guys like Teron Johnson as well, keeping those guys clean to go flow towards the ball and make a tackle. So when I watch the Bills, I feel like they're at their best when if they're trying to double team Daquan Jones, for example, he has the ability to break that double team or at least consume it such that the linebacker that is, he's covering is able to flow and make a play. And so for me, I just don't understand.
So you would
What about
roster.
the scheme? He wouldn't fit.
So you would roster 3 1 techs and 1 3 tech as the floor.
Austin Johnson's not a complete
I know he's not
an utter one. Like he is versatile to move around. He's
so
played
you think
more than just
so
nose
if you think D tackle, it's a fluid D tackle in sense of it could be a 1 tech or a 3 tech. Is that where you're probably?
Yeah.
It depends on who they do. So I agree.
You can't control who's available. So when the guy's there
100%.
and
No, I agree with
you have that value, again, and go back to value that you can get at whatever position it is. Now you've got the luxury of a roster built where you don't need necessarily one thing over another. You have players that are capable. And if there is a need after the draft, you have that post June 1st availability to try to work out, a deal for someone or, see who's still a free agent to fill that need. The draft isn't about filling needs, especially for the Bills. They've never used it to fill needs a ton. They've had targets, and maybe with Kaiir Elam, you could say they did reach and take a cornerback as a need, but their overall strategy and what they put out there is to take, guys that they value at their pick position.
Bob's coming in. I want to answer some of these questions before we keep going with our draft talk. Have we given up on Justin Shorter? I've seen this question a lot. No one's given up on Justin Shorter, and I know people get really defensive of Justin Shorter, but I'm painting you a picture here, right? The Bills take a receiver at 28 or they take a receiver at 60, right? So you have Stephon Diggs, a draft pick, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and then Justin Shorter at best is the fifth receiver. We're not giving up on him, but we have to remember he was a day 3 pick for a reason, and he was injured all last year. One of the reasons they brought in Matt Collins. Nothing against Justin Shorter, but this is not just the Bills fan base, and we do the same thing, but every fan base in the NFL does this. You overrate some of your players. You grade them higher than they actually are. Nothing wrong with Justin Shorter, but I see this all the time in my tweets. Oh, what about Justin Shorter? What about Justin Shorter? I'm not going into the season banking on Justin Shorter because that will probably burn you. So if he's your fifth, if he's your sixth receiver, I am totally okay with that, which is what he's going to be. They brought in Matt Collins directly compete with Justin Shorter. They're a very similar style of players, and they brought in Curtis Samuel. And if you want him to draft a receiver, which most people do, he's going to go in front of Justin Shorter. And a lot of people want him to double dip with a receiver. So if you do take another receiver in day 3, guess who that receiver on day 3 is competing with? Justin Shorter. And if that receiver on day 3 is a little bit better than Justin Shorter's on the practice squad or Justin Shorter gets cut. So there's nothing against Justin Shorter. I think he has intangibles, was never able to stay healthy in college, didn't stay healthy his first year, and was a day 3 pick. So I'm sorry to get a little mean on Justin Shorter here, but I think we gotta call a spade where Justin Shorter is at. I want him to excel because if he excels, then it makes the Bills a lot better. Then he's a really good player. But I think we have to call a spade. And if you guys want the Bills to draft 2 receivers, which I see a lot out of those 11 picks, it just potentially keeps pushing Justin Shorter closer to not being on this 53-man roster when we kick off in September.
I just think we're going to need receivers and draft as many as we can to maybe 1 or 2 will be legit starters for years to come. And then you have rookie contract receivers in their second and third years, probably, they probably need a year or 2 to really become to that legit level. And then you have 2 or 3 years of them on rookie deals being the productive offense. So I haven't given up on Justin Shorter one bit. I just don't know how good he's going to be. I have no way to know what he can do, what he can't do, what they're going to ask him to do. It remains to be seen for me. I'm not going to project that anything on him that he's good, bad, or otherwise. I just don't know. How could you know? You haven't seen him.
Yeah.
You don't know what their plans are for him. There's no way to know what they're going to want him to do, what they're going to ask him to do. I think they're going to give him the opportunities to do
100%.
some things. I think they're going to give him some opportunities to show that maybe he could step into sort of a Gabe Davis role. And if he can, be utilized as a blocker, can he be that red zone threat to go up and get a ball? And, maybe they think like Lad McConkey and Xavier Worthy are better fits because maybe they don't see that they need the height and big, jump ball guy because Justin Shorter's on the roster and they want to give him that chance. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm like, give me the surest fire pick that you think can become wide receiver 2 that we can get and maybe get 2 of them just because it's like, I don't want to go out away from this draft not having found a guy that's going to either be wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 for 5 years.
If Lance, I'm going to ask you this question. We'll move on from Justin Shorter in a second. If the Bills draft 2 receivers, right? They draft Leggett or AD Mitchell, right? And then they draft another receiver, say 4th round, 5th round. I think the writing's on the wall for Justin Shorter. I really do.
I think it makes his path to the roster harder, but it doesn't take away from his opportunity. They're going to give him the opportunity, and then it's up to him to perform and figure
every
out
opportunity. But
actually,
obviously,
but there's nothing saying that he can't be better than one of those picks either, though, right? I mean, there's nothing saying one way or the other. Just a matter of yes, it'll be. What are they thinking? What are they thinking about him? If they pick 2, and especially if they pick, a guy that has a bigger body that can go up and get the ball, I think it's definitely going to be, the writing on the wall, as you would say. But it's just a matter of fact that it's not known. Do I think that he's in the future to be something that's going to be a sustained excellence of a player throughout the next 3 years? No, I don't think that, but I don't know. I don't know what opportunities they want to give him. And uh, like you said, he hasn't necessarily shown us anything to believe that he's going to be anything more than practice squad or fringe roster player.
Yeah, and I do think the drafting two guys puts it a very difficult spot for
Makes it a long shot for sure.
Justin Fielder because you
Yeah.
probably have a little bit more faith in Matt Collins just because he's a veteran and has done that
Mhm.
before. So, which position group do we need to double dip on? Just variety wins? I would probably say receiver, but that's the boring answer because everyone says that. Another position you could double dip on, like you could double dip on
Any
edge.
defensive line position. Yep.
Yeah, any defensive line. It's not double dipping if you take an edge and a D tackle. That's not double dipping. They're two different positions. But if you take an edge at 60, take an edge in the 5th round. Yeah, take a D tackle at 60. Take another D tackle. Right. I think the two D line positions you
Right.
can double dip. I think receiver. You could safety if you wanted to take a guy at 60 and a guy day 3. And the Bills have been very good at taking defensive backs in the
They
3rd.
got
And
11. They
day
got
3.
11 picks. So I mean, I don't
So
see where they're not going to take two of the same position
yeah,
multiple times, maybe.
receiver's a
Or
boring answer
I think
because everyone says it.
you
So.
get that three tech guy. If they get the three tech guy they're talking about early, then they take a like a Jordan Jefferson later on, or Spins coming in O line. I like that idea. I think that
Yeah.
you have to try to get another interior guy to groom, and then another tackle as well. So I think that yeah, the line, you can never have too many linemen on a team. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, you can take 2 depth guys on day 3. Or you can take a guy 4 and round 6. You can do that. So I do think there's a couple of positions they can
I
double
think
dip on.
that's the interesting thing, like we said, with the draft strategy. It's all hinging on the value and what happens in round 1, because whether
Yeah.
or not you move back to get additional day 2 picks, and you have, if you somehow turn, let's say, 28 and a fourth, or 28, a fourth, and a fifth, and you get a second and 2/3 or something like that.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure, I don't know all the teams that have maybe 2 third-round picks or how that would be possible, but if there's a chance to get a second rounder with 2/3 in from 28 and some other things, um, that just lines you up for such a nice draft haul there, where the value of your picks is gonna be maximized. And I think that they're really gonna be able to utilize the day 3 stuff to move up and pick earlier in day 3 than later. I think they're gonna wanna move around day 3 and kinda pick and choose where they get their guys, rather than sitting at those later spots and picking all of them. I think we may wanna, have a trade or 2, or maybe even 3 on, especially on day 3, maybe moving back from round 1, but then moving up as you get deeper in the draft and getting more of those early day 3 prospects.
For example, right? This is just a quick chart, right? Draft value, right? So pick 28 is worth 660 points, right? Or that's the value, right? So let's try to get 2 picks of that, right? So I don't know if these picks work, but I'm just throwing rounds out here. Round 2, you go for pick, say you go pick 50. That's a little too back. Go, let's see. I'm trying to do something. Let's go. If you go pick 45, that's 450 points. So then you have 230 points to work with, which would get you to pick 72, for example. So for this, you could get, if you traded pick 28, you can get pick 45 and pick 72. That's so, and then you would have pick 45, you would have pick 60, and you would have pick 72, which would get you 2 second round picks and a 3rd round pick. So that's that value off this chart, and I don't know if those teams match up at all. I'm just throwing up a value, right? I feel like that makes it a little easier. Like a mid third, like a pick 70 and pick 45. That's kind of where I would think it would be the value for the Bills. And do you want to do that? I don't know, but it's just kind of the value. But Lance, you said a good thing, and we'll get to a simulator in a couple minutes to end the show. But this draft strategy is fun because there's a lot of different ways the Bills can do it. You said the most important part of the show, or point of the show. What they do at 28 kind of changes the path of what they do in the rest of the draft. Because if they don't go receiver at 28, in my opinion, then you got to go receiver in the second round. You have to. So they go receiver at 28, Lance. Let's say they don't move at all. You go receiver at 28 and you're picking at pick 60. There's a lot of different options. Is it the D tackle? Is it the D end? Is it an offensive lineman potentially? Is it a safety? So if you go after round 1 and they went Chop Robinson, edge rusher, then it becomes a little interesting. So I'm intrigued. I'm excited to see what it could be, but 28 has a lot of weight on what the Bills do in the rest of the draft. Spins coming in, wide receiver, D tackle, safety, unless the top player is taken and there's an O lineman that falls. I don't see the Bills drafting another position in the first round. So I would cross out safety, in my opinion, for first round, because I don't think that there's any value there. But receiver and D tackle could be there. And I would switch safety out with edge spin, but you got 2 out of 3 for me. I think, Lance, I'm getting away from D tackle at 28. I don't know if it's most valuable for the Bills at this moment.
And it's not to say that Murphy or whomever is not worthy of taking at that position. It's just for this team, with the needs that exist, with the, I guess with the personnel they have and things, is it the best value pick at 28? Can you get more out of that? Can you get a similar productive player like Braden Fisk, rather than taking, let's say, maybe Murphy or Newton at 28? Can you still come out of the draft with Fisk later in the draft and also acquire another third round pick and then turn that into your safety?
Or could you?
It's like it just seems like it's a no brainer.
Or could you, even if you don't trade, you could take A.D. Mitchell at 28 and then take Fisk at 60. Just do that. I like this question by the Moment. Nice little YouTube handle we got going there. Is either Jalen Polk out of Washington, Jermaine Burton from Alabama, or Jalen McMillan, a good enough wide receiver at 60 for you guys? I'm going to say no. I have round 3 grades on all 3 of those guys. And I love Jalen McMillan. Him and Polk were teammates. And I think Jermaine Burton's kind of slept on just because he wasn't super, super productive at Alabama. But I have round 3 grades on those guys. I'm not opposed to that, but I would probably go more of a Brendan Rice or Javon Baker, or maybe even a Tez Walker at 60, even Malachi Corley, I like a little bit better. But I do think the round 2 and round 3 grades I have are very fluid, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would like to. That's one of the reasons, honestly, that I really like to get into the third round, is to have a shot at Jalen Polk, to be honest with you. He's one of the more intriguing players. I watched maybe more of him than some of the other receivers in this draft because I was just intrigued by Washington this past year and wanted to watch a little bit more of their games, and they were on more. They obviously played in the national championship. So, I like Jalen Polk. I'm not sure I like him at 60, but
one of those 3 guys is going to go in round 2. Like, it's going to happen because there's a lot of receivers. So I'm going to go back after next week, after going on vacation for a week, I'm going to go back and look a little more in depth on some of these guys. But it's a great question because I do think it's a legit question. And I like Jalen McMillan. I like Polk. Jermaine Burton's a very interesting guy. If you haven't watched this tape yet, wasn't super productive at Alabama, but could be very good. Jason Suggs coming in might as well. I'm assuming he might as well just re-sign Phillips, Poona Ford, and Linval Joseph. Might as well not do that, please. I'm going to pass on all 3 of those guys. No offense to all 3 of those guys, but I'm going to go on a limb and say Poona Ford does not want to come back to Buffalo. Linval Joseph is at his point of his career, and Jordan Phillips can't stay healthy. So Lance, do you have any interest in bringing
Yeah, Phillips might retire. Who knows?
Punafort? I think Punafort.
Joseph might retire, and then I thought Punafort got signed somewhere.
Even if he did, dude, you think he's coming back to Buffalo?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on that. So we'll see. And it's been, I get what you're saying. We have a late round 2 pick 60. So it's pretty much any round 2 talent will get drafted before a pick. I disagree. I hate, I'm not a huge fan of like the round 2 talent or round 3 talent, right? Like I think there's a ton of good players. Like I don't, you know what I mean? You find players and some guys value players higher. Some team, Lance might value Jalen McMillan at pick 45, right? Some other team might value him at pick 85. That's the difference in the draft. So I think it's an interesting conversation here. So I don't love the conversation of all the talent, round 2 talents could be gone at pick 60 because that's not true. That's not how the draft really works.
By the way, Punafort is a charter, so he's not available.
I thought he got signed. And Polk is going in the second. I 100% could see Jalen Polk going in the second. I think he's more of a round 3 guy, but I do think there's maybe a couple more guys that might have to move up just based off the amount of receivers that can go. And look, I have 8 first-round grades for wide receivers. I don't think all 8 go in the first round. I'm probably thinking 6, max 7. So someone's falling back to 34, 35. Who is it? I don't know, but it's gonna be interesting. Lance, you want to do a simulator, or do you have anything else you want to talk about draft strategy wise?
No, my notes on positional value in each round, and we probably went through this, but just to go through here is to say, wide receiver early and often. I would love like 2 or 3 wide receivers picked here because, like I said, we got to come out of this draft with someone who can play wide receiver for this team for the next 4 years. Edge and DT are my targets in the second round if we get that wide receiver, and then safety. If we can find a way back in the third, if we can find a way to come away with Cam Kinchins somehow, that would be ideal. And then I think the offensive line, and someone, I think maybe Spin was talking about this, offensive line still in play on day 2. Guys like Christian Mahogany at guard, although he played primarily right guard. So I'm not sure how interested they'd be given that we have Torrance at right guard, but I'm not sure if Torrance or Mahogany may be flexible to move one side or the other. So there's that. And then the tackle out of Notre Dame, I think, would be a really good target for the Bills. If he, Blake Fisher looks like he's round 3 grade on your big board, but wouldn't mind him at the end of.
I gotta do a little work on my O line. I said off air. That's not my.
No, I got you. It's all
expertise. I got to go back and look. Everything's fluid. I do this. My big board just because I like having most of the prospects in front of me when I'm watching the draft, and I like to click check off guys, cross out guys to see who goes heading into day 2. I enjoy that. And look, I'm not going to sit here and be like I watched all the offensive line tape.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm not going to lie about that. People lie about that all the time. Like I watched all this tape. No, you don't. You don't. You have full-time jobs that take you away in your family. So not everyone does that when they tell you that on social media. So just be aware of that. But I do think, so like positional value. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Yeah, receiver round 1, edge round 1. That's probably my value there. Round 2, I have 3 options: safety, D tackle, and edge, depending on what they do in round 1. Round 4, let's say they don't have a 3rd round pick. Round 4 is probably safety, Lance, if they don't get a safety in the first 2 picks. And then throw in a running back, throw in an offensive lineman, throw in another D lineman, and I think you can kind of get creative. Late in day 3, throw in a quarterback. I would like a Joe Milton, someone like that. Maybe someone a quarterback would be kind of cool. Someone you can have Devin Leary from Kentucky, or Kedon Slovis from BYU. Someone that they can maybe learn down the road and turn into a legit backup. So I think there's a lot of things you can do, and obviously we have 4 more shows heading into draft time.
And because we have so much more to talk about on the draft, I want to just highlight this one question to maybe put that final bow and final conversation on free agency. The free agents that are available for the Bills that were Bills previously or last year are Micah Hyde, Deontay Hardy, Phillips, Matakevich, Damian Harris just retired, right? So he's
Mhm.
not really there. Linval Joseph's 80 years old in football terms, so I don't think that's going to happen. Shaq Lawson is the one name still out there, and so it's Hyde, Hardy, and Lawson for me, and Matakevich. Sorry, potentially with the new kickoff rule and stuff. It's some of these guys maybe post June 1st to be able to bring maybe to fit a Hardy back in there if you want him to handle return duties. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to be it. I'm saying it's a possibility. If you're asking for what familiar faces, you could see Hardy. Um, you have Matakevich, just again with the new kickoff rule in special teams, could see that happen. Shaq Lawson just seems too easy. I mean, he's not signed yet. And
He'd be the only one I think returns, in my opinion.
post June 1st, they'll have a little more money freed up. They can kind of give him a deal and see what happens from there. And we'll see.
But
Micah Hyde, by all intents and purposes, for me, seems to be like he's retiring, but they're not closing the door on it. And if for some stroke of uh, miracle that he is healthy enough and can play at Micah Hyde's level, boy, I mean, there's no reason not to welcome him back, but I
I
just
t
don't think that's really in the cards.
I tweeted on when we found out. I was joking, but not joking. I was being serious. I tweeted Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, draft pick, Micah Hyde. If he wants to come back and he thinks he can, he's fully healthy and he gets cleared, but ride with it. Look, Edge. Well, I think Lawson's probably the only why. We'll put Micah Hyde aside because I think he's in a different category than kind of the other guys, in my opinion. But Shaq Lawson's probably the only one I probably would see back. In my opinion, Casey Tuhill maybe makes that a little tougher, and if they draft a couple edges, that might make it tougher. And do they think Kingsley Jonathan is more productive at this point than Shaq Lawson? But if they don't really walk away with any game-changing edges in the draft, then Shaq's in play. But if they take an edge at 60 and they take another edge at fifth round, right, Lance? I don't know if Shaq is in the cards to come back. It depends, I think, more. Like you said, post June 1st, when they get the Trey White cap space.
Right.
It depends. It depends what they do with that, and maybe they add another game changer. That's like Leonard Floyd, like they did last year, and that's an interesting conversation we can have post June 1st over there. Let's rip a simulator here, Lance.
You want to do the NFL draft buzz still, or do you have another one you want to
Do
do?
you want to do another one? Or we can do NFL. What's the one? NFL draft database. Is that the one that does trades?
Not sure. I have the draft. I have NFL draft buzz up because that's what I was thinking. So,
Let's do that.
yeah, I'm not really quick on my feet. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, just rip it.
I think Graham Barton went. Oh my god, what?
I had trades on with this one.
Do we get offered trades?
So I'm not sure if we get offered trades or if other teams have obviously made trades throughout the
Because I
first
know
round
some
here.
other simulators have you get
So
offered trades.
I think we would have got there's somewhere it's probably here and I'm not in it, but
You're fine.
yeah. So here it seems like pretty. I don't know. This is the tough part about the simulator is it's gone the way that we hope, and then our Brian Thomas Jr. is there. There's no reason not to take him, right? I mean, what else are you gonna do?
I think you're running to the podium. I always hate this because I don't know if he gets to 28. You know what I mean? If
Well, you can only do what they give.
I'm with you,
So
man. I'm with
we're
you.
just working with what they give us. Then that's the pick. I
We're
mean,
going
there's
Brian Thomas.
no
How
other way
many
to do it.
rounds did you do? 5?
5, yeah.
I like Chris Braswell a lot. Zach Frazier, Cameron Kitchens at 60. What's the D tackle room look like? Doesn't look great.
Ruke
He's not bad.
or Hora.
Oh, horror. What a name. D-line. He would be the only. Ooh, Brandon Dorless.
Dorless is there.
Marshawn Nealand is very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Holt Jr. is a good D tackle.
Yeah, these guys. This is why you don't necessarily go T tackle in the first round, like we talked about, because this is just like, dude, any one of these guys could be really, really good. Michael Hall Jr. is going to be a fine defensive tackle in this league.
What are you thinking here? I'm thinking edge or D tackle. We'll go look at the safeties quickly for a second. I think Kitchen's the only one that showed up. Renardo Green is starting to shoot up people's draft boards, and I need to do a little bit more research on him. So, Lance, a name to keep in the back pocket of you, man. Renardo Green from Florida State. Someone that I think is starting to really shoot up, who I really haven't heard of that much. You know what I mean?
Not tall enough. No.
Not tall enough. How tall is he?
6
Like 6. Third round grade. So I have him as a third round grade, but I'm just saying he's starting to show up a little more. This is a D line pick, Lance.
You like Braswell?
You hear that?
What? You like Braswell?
What the heck is that?
What's what?
Something just started playing out of my computer, and I don't know what it was. I have nothing opened. I have this screen in my draft big board. Is it
You want Dorless or Braswell? Who you like?
Yeah, that threw me freaking for a whirlwind right there. Braswell's the better player, and he's more of like your Von Miller type. So you're gonna get a legit edge rusher there, Lance. Like a legit. The thing with Dorless though, you can flex him inside too. So
right, that's what they like.
That might have been the better. I think Braswell's the better player. Braswell's the better player, but I do think. What's the safety room look like? Because I think the 4th round's where the safety has to be here. Oh boy. Oh, I would go Tyke Smith here so fast. That's who I would go.
In the fourth round?
Oh, yeah. I like Tyke Smith a lot.
We're at pick 128, so we also have pick 134 in the 4th round. So let's just see.
We'll wait.
What else? I'm not saying we don't take him. I'm just saying what else.
What are your thoughts on Tyler Davis? D tackle from Clemson.
I always get him confused.
6'2", 301. He's your guy, Lance.
Yeah, I just would rather take Jordan Jefferson in the 5th, maybe.
Maybe we shouldn't take Jordan Jefferson for the 700th freaking time.
Yeah, we can.
Let's take Tyler Davis. If Tyke Smith's not here, I'm going to be so mad at you. Oh, we finally got a trade.
Too late.
No, this is not helping us.
Yeah. How did we not get trades before now? Jeez.
Man, I don't want. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know your trades. We got our guy.
Give me Tyke Smith.
He's here. He's ready for us.
Oh my God, this is a great draft. How many picks we have? 3 or 2? I always forget how many 5th we have.
3, I believe. Yep. That's what John was saying. I think John in the comments said he read 9 picks. That must be next year because this year we definitely have 11. 3 5th, 3 6th, 7th, 2 4th.
We're gonna have to start. We're gonna have to move some of those freaking picks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Move forward with those picks.
How do you feel about Jacob Cowing here?
Go look at his 40 time. I think he's flying. I think he's really underrated. 4.38. Yeah. I think he's a speed. Does he fit too much like Shakir and Samuel?
Shakir's not that fast, though.
True. Okay. Does Jacob Cowing come in and be maybe kind of a little bit productive on offense, but does he become your punt returner, kick returner?
Good. You like him here in the 5th at 144?
Yeah, I don't know if he gets 16 more picks. Ooh, Isaiah Davis. What's the O-line room looking like? Mason McCormick, I like at the tackle position. And I like Hunter Nozart a lot.
Right on.
Give up the 5th. A poor attempt at elevator music. Yes, so something was coming out of my computer there. I have no idea what that was. I thought that was coming on you.
This guy's ranked better. I'm going to take him.
I have no idea who you just took.
Satao Lemea.
Oh, the Utah kid.
Yep.
I like it, Lance. I like it.
Bortolini's still here. Maybe with 163 if he's still there. Let's see. What else we need in here? We got a safety. Jordan Jefferson's there.
Running back would be a good option.
What do you love about receiver here? We still got Coing or
We're
Smith.
gonna go. Oh, we didn't go receiver yet. I forgot.
Not a
Yeah,
second one. No.
yeah, go Cohen. Go Cohen. Come on.
All right. Bordellini still there. Good pick there. Wabe, Dylan Johnson.
I forgot Satua Luame is a tackle. I have him as a 4th and 5th round pick at the moment. So good pick, Lance.
We got him in the 5th. Easy.
Bordellini might not be a bad pick.
Love Bordellini there.
Bordellini.
There's safety.
Tornellini. Brennan Jackson's not a bad edge rusher. Brennan Jackson.
Good 10-yard. Good 40.
I would take him probably. Double dip and edge. I don't hate this draft at all.
There we go.
With a little elevator music. No idea where that came from. Might have been the website. The what website I had open? The draft chart. What website I had on for like value of each pick.
Mm-hmm.
So might have been that. Okay, sir.
There we are.
This will be on social media later this week. You can find it on the Built in Buffalo Twitter, personal, or either one of our personal Twitters. It will be on that platform. We did last week's. I think I did yesterday, the day before. So, Lance, when you get the full, I won't be here next week. I'll be overseas. I'll be in England. I'm leaving Friday night, coming back the following Sunday. So I'm gonna be gone for a week. But don't worry. You're back Tuesday at 8. So
yep. I'll be joined by Dan Tortora. He's resides in the Syracuse, New York area where I'm from, and met Dan there at a trivia night. And he does a lot of media for some of the local universities around the central New York and I guess greater southern New York. So does media for Binghamton, I believe, and a lot of some of the smaller schools in Syracuse and different things like that. So just a good knowledge base of the college scene and things like that. So we're going to come in and talk a little bit about the college players and give more of insight, moving towards the draft and what players.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be more player and prospect oriented, and I'm going to spin it as much as I can towards Bills specific, because this is a Bills podcast. But there may be some non-Bills talk and just general prospect and player type discussion next week.
Yeah, and I'll be past midnight when the show kicks off for me next
Better
Tuesday.
watch live.
I don't know. I'll hop in for the first couple minutes and say hi. Not hop into the show. I'll hop into the comment section and get it out on social media. But yeah, so don't worry. I won't be here next week. So if you only come for me, well, tough nuggies. You can enjoy Lance with a great guest next week. And then after that, we got 3 shows with me and Lance heading into the draft, and we're going to full steam ahead with the draft. Maybe try to get a guest on. Might need to work a little hard on that by me. Maybe we'll get some Bills media on as well, talking some draft as always. And yeah, so if you didn't miss this episode, rewatch it on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Right now, over 400 people are watching on all platforms. That is awesome. We really appreciate that. And if you did miss this episode, audio platform comes out tomorrow morning. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Odyssey. Just type in Built in Buffalo Podcast Network. Have a great night to you as well, Sandra. So I appreciate you tuning in. And as always, the Buffalo Blitz is presented by Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you guys use code Blitz for 100% deposit match up to $100. Just go on the App Store, type in Underdog Fantasy, or just type in Underdog Fantasy to Google, and you will be set up. Lance, tell everyone about what was I saying? Anything else Built in Buffalo before we sign out of here?
Yeah, feel free to check out all of our great content creators we have. Going Deep Buffalo on tomorrow, and the Hoof on Thursday, and then the Buffalo Basement on Friday, with the Founders Pod on Saturday, and Izzy on Sunday. Also, T is on Thursday afternoons. So check out all the great Built in Buffalo content creators we have, all of our social media pages. If you can, head over to YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's building up pretty nicely, thanks to going deep, and a lot of folks around the brand here really helping to build that platform. So yeah, go like, subscribe, and share, and help us hit towards the top of those algorithms. We appreciate it.
Yeah, over 400 people still watching, still listening. So we really appreciate that. Doing some great numbers on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Lance will be back next week at Tuesday at 8 p.m. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure you watch this if you haven't. And make sure you listen to the audio platform tomorrow morning. He was Lance and I was Peter. And go Bills.
Go Bills.